Live from our Lakeview studio in the Windy City. Welcome to the Chicago Python February 2021 main meeting. My name is Ali Sibji. I'm one of the organizers of Chicago Python. I'm going to be your host for tonight's event. Let's get started. All right, so tonight's event is ChiPy Presents Context Managers. Before we get started, want to make everybody aware of our code of conduct. There's a lot more information available on our website or our new website. So what is ChiPy? ChiPy, or the Chicago Python Users Group, is a Python-focused community that was founded back in 2003. We've grown from being a group that used to fit into small conference rooms to being one of the largest Python communities in the world. We have over 6,000 members on Meetup. Also want to just give a shout out to our board members. These fabulous folks help make ChiPy run behind the scenes. We actually have an election coming up. I think we might talk about that a little later. So some of ChiPy initiatives, we have a monthly project night. We also have a mentorship program, or as I like to market it as, our world famous mentorship program. This used to be an in-person program, but we've transitioned it to being more of an asynchronous web-based portal where folks can meet and mentor each other. Let's see, what else? So that website is chipymentor.org. Check it out. We also do have a jobs board. There are a couple of jobs posted. One of our sponsors contacted me earlier this week. They're going to be posting some more jobs. So if you are looking for something in the data science or web part of Python, check it out. And also that website, there's something going on there. Does anybody else know what's going on? We have, on top of our main meeting, a lot of special interest groups that focus in on niche areas of Python. I do want to just give a shout out to our algorithm SIG. That's a session that focuses on those HackerRank or LeetCode type of problems, and just helps folks get better at them and prepare for coding interviews. We do have some upcoming events. Next Thursday is going to be project night. We're going to be doing it virtually in our gathered town space. On March 4th, we're going to have the ChiPy Algo SIG, and our next main meeting is going to be on March 11th. Can't wait. So what's going on in Python? Did anybody see the new chipy.org website? Doesn't it look awesome? We have a talk about that, so I won't get into it too much, but shout out to the team for all their hard work. What else is new? Should put a stamp on this slide. PEP 634, which is pattern matching, it just got accepted, and it's going to be available for use, I believe, in Python 3.10. So look out for that. There's a tutorial. So the idea is like pattern matching is case statements. It's really big in the functional ecosystem. There is a PEP 363, which is a tutorial for how to use pattern matching or how it's going to be used. So if you are interested and you're lucky enough to be running at the bleeding version of Python, the alpha 3.10, you're going to be excited about this. So we got two fantastic talks tonight. Our first talk is going to be about the ChiPy website redesign. It's going to be by Ray Berg. And our second talk is called The Enters and Exits of Context Managers. I think it's a fantastic title. It's by Mason Egger. After tonight's event, I think it should take around 40 to 45 minutes. We're going to be meeting on our in our gathered out town space. So if you go to chipy.town, you can see what that is all about. It's a very cool platform that they got going there. A few folks, it looks like, have already found our chat window. So if you could look right over there, you can interact with their community. Also, if you have questions, our speakers will be taking them at the end of their sessions. What else? Where can you find us? If you're looking to talk about Python outside of just these live streams, we have a very active Slack community. If you go to this link right over here, send yourself an invite. You can join our space. I believe there's around 2,100 folks there, and we're talking about things that are happening both in the Chicago Python ecosystem as well as the wider Python community. I think there's a couple conversations about what's going on with pattern matching. So that's where I found out about it. Where else can you find us? We have a Twitter. It is at Chicago Python, and everything plus a lot more. Plus, actually, stuff I don't even know about since the website redesign is available there on chippy.org. One of our sponsors is doing a giveaway, so just want to make everybody aware of this. So our sponsor JFrog has a monthly drawing. So we're just going to be doing this every single month of 2021. It's going to be for an Adafruit clue. If you scan this QR code or use the bit.ly link that I'm going to also drop in the chat after this is done, you can enter in to win an Adafruit clue with that little screen right over there and a chance to win a JFrog t-shirt. And they have fantastic t-shirts, make a lot of great references well with that JFrog brand. And just everybody, we just want to call it out one more time. Our after party is going to be in our gathered out town space, which is chippy.town. All right, so that's it for our announcements. I'm going to bring in our first speaker to the stream. Hey, Ray, welcome to the Chicago Python live stream.
Hey, Sivji. Glad to be here.
It's great having you on. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Oh, I actually wasn't here too long ago. I am a software developer here in the city of Chicago. I am currently the president of the board for ChiPy. We'll be stepping down at the end of the month, and I don't know. I write a lot of Python stuff, I suppose.
Okay, awesome. How did you first get into this Python stuff?
Oh, it was grad school. In grad school, I had this compiler's assignment, and you could pick any language you wanted to. And I'd heard really cool stuff about Python, and I was like, oh, I should probably, the teacher keeps saying you do it in C++ or Java, but I really want to learn Python. And it was a terrible idea in that specific case because I was the only one doing it. But I got to learn Python and never turned back.
Cool. Is there a favorite library that you have?
Oh, that's a good question. I spent a lot of my time in the Airflow library. It's workflow orchestration engine. I really recommend it for folks trying to figure out how to get out of the cron job space. It's a lot of fun to be in. But actually, I have one. If you want to install it and use it at the end of my talk, there's one that I made called Please Clap. Please hyphen clap. So you can pip install Please Clap. And depending on what system, I haven't really done a ton of good support. You'll get a nice little round of applause at the end of the talk today.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'd love to see that in action. So a lot of folks in our community and a lot of folks that are watching from home, not in Chicago, they've been experiencing the effects of the pandemic and just being locked out at home and being very socially distant from those they love. How have you managed to, have you kept sane and have you managed to do it?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I'm a strong extrovert, I like to say. I have some friends that I really like to keep in touch with. One of the key things, I think I mentioned this when I was last on, is I've found a group that wants to suffer through me learning to be a Dungeons and Dragons DM or GM. That's been a lot of fun. We've also tried to figure out. I'm the only one in my family here in Chicago, so I've tried to find a small enclave of like-minded and similarly detached folks to be in a pod together and see folks. So I found that to be a really nice thing, a small group of people that I can see on a fairly regular basis, and it's a lot of fun. We get to still do things like play video games, sometimes virtually, sometimes together. So it's nice.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it's always good to have that sense of community wherever you can find it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, are you ready to get started with your talk?
Why not? Let's do it.
All right, I will share your screen. Ray Berg, the floor is yours.
Oh, perfect. And I just realized I always play with the width of my screen, and I intentionally made that black background there. This is going to talk about the Chippy site redesign. You can spoil the talk by going and looking at chippy.org right now while I give the talk. But I would like to sort of walk you through sort of the methodology that we used, at least at a high level. This is not intended to be a really long talk. It's not intended to be an in-depth talk, but it's designed to sort of just walk you through what it looks like to do a big redesign like the one we did. And so to understand what that redesign looks like, I think you have to figure out where we started with. Sivji talked a little bit about when we started in 2003 and how small we were. On the top right, I have a piece of evidence about that that size. When we first launched our mailing list, you can see here that we had a call for action in September of 2005. This is about 2 years after we were founded, and somebody said, "Hey, all of the people who normally run ChiPy they're all gone. We really need to have somebody run ChiPy for an event." So this is sort of an example of how small we were back in 2005, which is 2 years after 2003. The second piece of early evidence is the first GitHub commit. We found a statue of the person who made the commit there from all the way back in 2012, ancient history. We have since then done 900 commits on this main application that we call chippy.org. So chippy.org is the website that serves up content, like notifies people of meetings, has some integrations with Meetup and all that stuff. And it's been our place to sort of unify for a very long time. We're kind of unique from other user groups in the fact that we have this site, we've built this, and we have this dedicated resource that we maintain. And it's not cheap in the sense that, like, number one, we pay for it, and number two, it's a lot of dev work that has to happen to keep that thing up and running. So it's kind of a boon when you talk to other user groups. They say, "Oh, we've been using this, GitHub hosted page because we can't afford hosting, or we've been using we've been using just Meetup itself and nothing else." With us, we're able to be more flexible because we're able to plug into the power of Django, which is the thing that it runs on. So a lot has changed in that time. But if you're sort of looking at what Chippy, the website, looks like as of last year, as of 2020, it looks kind of like this. So you see that we have a prominent display of the Chippy Chipmunk. We have this kind of large field of yellow for announcements. We have the meetings kind of called out there. And at this point, I think maybe you can kind of get a vibe. This is kind of an older feel for a website. It is, it's great. It's a great website. It's a very functional website. But it has its limitations. So some things that we noticed were it doesn't necessarily draw you to take action when you come into it, right? What is the first thing that you should do when you come to this Chippy page, right? Should I go read the announcements? Should I attend the next meeting, the upcoming events? What's the button for the next meeting that I should be clicking on? Is it the RSVP or is it the details button? What about past meetings, right? All of those buttons kind of have the same look and feel, and they're all kind of small. It looks pretty good on mobile. I mean, to be honest, like we've been doing work over years to make sure that this looks pretty solid. But when you get down further and you got down to the pages of sort of unmanaged sponsor logos that were really large, I don't have any screenshots of those. But if you get down to that, the page would just scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll on mobile. And on desktop, those images would be quite large. They would take up a lot of your screen. Sponsors didn't get a sense that they felt like they were really being sort of featured and like focused on. It was really just a dump of everybody who has supported us. So there are a couple of limitations that were here, but mostly we just wanted to kind of get a revised look. So the question isn't, whether we should or not. We think we all agree to that. The question is how and what should it look like in that final product. And the answer to that question came after lots of discussions over the years. Joe and I have talked about this. Like Sivji and I have talked about this. Other board members, even people who have left, we've all talked about redesigns. What does it look like? And then finally, in 2017, we got some information. And in 2017, we were running a mentorship program. One of the previous mentees said, "I really love this program. How do I give back?" And they were a designer. And I said, "Well, maybe you could." I have no pressure, but if you'd be willing to make a design for us, like to recommend different ways of doing the website, and I didn't know what to expect. And here's what we got. So we have for the Chippy mentorship site back at the time. That was when we were doing sort of cohort-based, very high-touch mentorship. We got this set of assets and designs. And this comes from one of our members, Jimmy Lay, who is absolutely fantastic. And you can tell from the quality of these designs. We won't sort of drill in because honestly, they're so good. I don't want you to get hooked on these before you see the real product. But she had really cool designs for things like different color schemes as you sort of traverse through our pages, really focus in on the content that we care about, provide really branded experience, things that make people go like, oh, I'm in the Python community, or I'm in the ChiPy website, or this is Chicago Python, this is absolutely who we are. And I think you'll have to talk to her. She's very fun to talk to, a wonderful person. Um, you have to talk to her, but taking a lot of inspiration from that Chicago skyline, Chicago colors, the flag, like all that stuff. Like, how do we take that and pull that into a design? And she came up with some really awesome stuff. And so in December of 2017, I made her a promise. I said, Gemile, guarantee this will be up in 6 months. And in halfway through 2018, I said, Gemile, I'm sorry. I promised to have it up by August. And in August, I said the same thing, and we continued that until I said, Gemile, I can't run the mentorship program anymore. I'm going to turn it over to Zach's, and he's going to run it, which is going to mean I can do the website redesign. And never did that either. And eventually, we decided to stop the mentorship program. I think it was about a year and a half ago, and switch to this buddy mentorship approach. And I had still not developed the website. At that point, we're like, well, we're not going to redesign the website for a program that's shutting down. I felt terrible because look at this great product, right? There's so many interesting design choices and interesting proposals being pitched here. Really fantastic work. And I said, whoa, what are we? We got to do something with it. And so we this year we decided we're going to do it. We're going to bite the bullet. What if we take that and we adapt it to the ChiPy homepage? So rather than being focused on mentorship, what if we pivot just a little bit, not that much, and say this is our general brand. This is ChiPy as a whole. And we said, well, how do we do that? And so the key was in scoping that problem. The scope of the problem was we have 2 developers, we have a week. I was going to take a week off. The developer I worked with, Sopan Mian, was going to take a week off, and we were going to sit down together and we're going to pair every day, and we're going to get it done. And we didn't want to spend, 15, 16 hours a day, right? That wasn't the goal. We wanted to do it in like a minimal amount of time. We wanted to take half days. If I take a week of vacation, I want it to feel like a vacation. So did a half day of vacation, a half day of work each day. So anywhere between like 4 and maybe 6 hours in the longest days. And we're going to get it done. We're going to figure it out. And so that's where we started. And we started with day one. And we had a Google Doc and we were walking through, and we started to talk about what were we going to do in each phase. So day one was just basic implementation. How do we get that design into the website? And the cool thing about this was that Sopan had already gone through and basically done all the hardest work. How do you do the styling? How do you get the images to lay out correctly? How do you translate what was the design dream and the assets that had been given to us? We used a tool called Zeppelin, or Gemile had really, that had really cool stuff like color schemes and things like that built into it, but it didn't have the overall HTML layout. And so Sopan, the week before, had taken some time and built this page from scratch. I'm giving the talk. In reality, it's her product. I'm just here to sort of sell you on it. So we were going to build this homepage, and the idea was get it up, get it in front of people, and just try to start with something basic. And so the first thing we did was a really simple throw the static page up. We took some content that was stuck. We grabbed basically the original HTML, dropped it in, and we took the view that was the home page and we just swapped out. We basically subclassed it and said, well, it's the same exact view, it's just going to use a different template structure. Neither Sopan and I had ever done something on this scale. Felt like a reasonable way to go. And so as a result, we were able to share. If you look on the right there, you can see the URL/preview. We were able to share that around to the board members and to people who were kind of checking in on our progress. And that allowed us to get some really quick feedback. Because at the end of day one, we could send it out, and people started saying, "Ooh, I like this. I don't like that," and they started tweaking the experience given what we had on the new page. Because again, we had the original design from one place, and the original design in one place, and we had the this new modified layout that was going to sit on top of our platform. And so we were really merging these two ideas in this moment. We really needed a lot of feedback. And we got it. So the next day, the feedback was, this isn't all of it. This is just some of it. But the next day was incorporate all the feedback. We had 2 sets of documents that we were kind of going through, getting all this feedback. And we said, like work through, work through, work through. And now we were focusing on trying to cover as much ground as we could. So we wanted to figure out how do we iterate through all the different things. So we had done the home page. We had gotten the starter of other pages. But what do we do? So we started with this idea. We said, well, it'd be kind of neat if, we could do the same thing we did at the homepage. Let's do it with the job board, because that was one that Sopan had been working on. She'd built that feature out last year, end of last year. And so we said, okay, great, we'll do the same exact approach. And we said, this isn't working. We're only going to get one done. And we were able to tune it a little bit and sit there for a little while and get the job board looking good. But then we're like, we have 80 more pages to go, right? There's no way we're going to get there. So we did this approach, and this is kind of a crazy slide. I'm trying to put it all on here, but you start on the top right. We said, okay, well, what if we made a context processor that would have a site preview setting on it? And so every time you loaded the page, it would give you site preview as a variable, and that site preview would just be, was the settings set to site preview, right? That's the middle right. And if you look in the top left, we got rid of all that code that was sitting in this idea of like secondary objects, and we were able to, on the bottom left, put in this yes/no filter and apply it to every single one of our views. So every single template. So every single template had this Boolean function that said, is it site preview or is it not, controlled by the environment. And then we were able to say, okay, if it is, then turn on this new the project name was called Shiny. So Shiny, turn on the Shiny Slim view or use the site base. Turn on the Shiny whatever view or use the site base. And we just replaced the entire application at once. That way we knew that in production it would look exactly the way it does today, and in every other environment it didn't. And on the very bottom right, maybe you can make out the fact that I said, hey, if you want to check this out, you can just turn this feature on in your Docker environment and check out what we're working on. People could check in, they could see what we were doing, but we wouldn't interrupt the main flow. We did deploys throughout the week without problem. So the next day, this is day number 3. Again, we had 5 days to do this in. Was getting the flat pages working, getting the RSVP systems. This is the stuff that was absolutely critical. We needed to have this stuff in place. If it didn't work, it would be considered a failure, right? So you got to get this stuff to work. You got to have the dynamic content loading. You got to have the flat page. This is like flat pages are a module that most of our site uses for the like onesie twosie pages that we have. So the code of conduct, the donate page, we had a ChiPy giving page. There's lots of different pages that are all kind of embedded in there. We needed to have all of them look fantastic. So we needed to get that done. The next day, we were able to then focus back in and what I say, zoom in on the details. We were able to start tweaking some of the details that were less, ground to cover and things like that. And so we really got to spend time improving some style and adding some new nifty features. And I'm going to talk about one right here. This one is a feature called the featured sponsor. And this is a new thing that we had sort of dreamed up. The idea was we want sponsors to be proud that they're going to be part of our platform. We also want them to have this, like when they share it, they say, hey, we're the featured sponsor at ChiPy. We don't want the next click to be a different sponsor because it makes the sponsorship experience feel cheap. It's not cheap. They're going to have, it's not like throw a coin and have it be a different sponsor every time. We want to make sure that the featured sponsor is featured for a period of time, some big block of time. And how do we do that? So it's an interesting thing. I'm going to throw this little algorithm up on the side. I'm not sure if it's that visible for you. It's in the code base. You can go take a look in the sponsor model on line 70. You can see this code that we wrote. We had to have this giant doc string because the thing doesn't make any sense. But the idea was to try to get this block of time, draw a circle and say, okay, well, this portion of the circle, this is going to be whatever the top sponsor is, or like we like have segments divided up by, I think it's just by the sponsor name. And then a sponsor is given an amount of credits for whatever level they're at. If they're a bronze level sponsor, they get 1 credit. If they're a silver, they get 2. If they're gold, they get 3. And if they're platinum, they get 4. And so if you add up all the credits and then you divide the pie by the number of credits that are given out to sponsors, you can put each part of the pie into a sponsor pot. And so that was the problem. And we were able to figure it out. It was kind of fun to do that. I'd love to see a PR for it tonight if you can come up with one that's better than this. And the results are pretty cool, right? When you see it, you can see JFrog, who's a big sponsor of ours, Braintree, who's a big sponsor. When you go to the website, you're going to see those big sponsors pop up front and center. One of the other cool things that we figured out in the details was trying to figure out how to make sure that even though we wanted it to display as on a large page, top to bottom, we really want the users to have a good experience, right? We want to have the user say, "I'm reading top to bottom, left to right." So I don't want to put the featured sponsor on the left, but I also don't want to break up the meeting from the meeting topics. And so there's this cool feature called Flex MD Row Reverse. You can kind of see it on the bottom there, that Jemile and Sopan came up with. So that was a really cool, a nifty feature that they figured out, and that allowed us to say on mobile, the sponsor goes up on top, and the meeting topics go underneath, and then on the big screen they pull side to side. So little details like that make go a big way, because I want to have that experience be really good on both platforms. So the next one is deliver, last day, Friday. And so we sat down. We really had a little bit of time here, and we were able to tweak. We had some extra time. We tweaked a bunch of different things. We had a couple of things left to do on this Friday, and then we were able to launch. We were able to push to production, and we met our deadline. We did it all in 5 days. So you see the new site. You can see sort of a full screen all the way to the right. You see the mobile version in the middle there. It's clean. It's big, but it's also like it has only the information you need on that home page. On the home page, everything else has been moved away to other pages. So the sponsors that are featured, they get all the real estate for sponsor spots, and they get that sort of prized position. The experience for the user is 2 buttons right when you come in. Are you interested in February 11th, or are you interested in other events? That's what we want you to do. We want you to click on one of those 2 buttons. And then if you click the one on the left, it slow scrolls you down, and if you click the one on the right, it brings you to the next set of events. There's a bug there that I found today. The next set of events, see if you can find it. The sponsors page also got refactored to try to incorporate this like nice sleek view that puts all the sponsors together on the side, as opposed to just, again, dumping a bunch of sponsor logos out. So the question that you're going to ask is like, okay, it took a week. It looks pretty good. What did we miss? Everybody misses something. This one's my favorite. I didn't ask for Natasha's permission before slapping her message up on the screen, but in Slack here, love the new site, love it. But I'm trying to register for this meeting, the one that we're in. So Natasha, I hope you're out there somewhere. I love it. I can't volunteer. I can't get up here. I can't get in. I can't RSVP. And I said, well, that seems bad, right? That's not a good experience to have. Then So you say, well, how bad is it? Well, do you remember my earlier slide where I said this is the critical thing? You have to have, like, if the goal is for us to have meetups and RSVPs, you got to have it work. So this was critical, right? I even said it was critical. So I logged in and was able to. These are all taken from different, screenshots, snapshots in time. So don't pay attention to the timestamps. But in a few minutes, I was able to say, I think I fixed everything, and Natasha was able to confirm that I did in fact fix that for him. And then I got another Slack notification. Hey, it looks like we have the same problem over here as well. Something else happened. This came from our fearless leader, the head of the Web Guild. And so then I really started sweating. It's really weird. We were able to fix that one too. But we've got RSVP forms kind of laid out all over, because the redesign, while it does change largely the front, the facade of the website, we still are trying to put as much of the stuff in there as what was there before. We found whole modules we were able to delete because no one uses them. But we wanted to keep all the modules, even if they're not underused or less used. The profiles module, for example, we wanted to leave them there, not break them. And we clearly broke the RSVP form from another part of the website. Yeah. So what did we miss? Well, a lot of things. Like, it wasn't just that big RSVP problem. There's a whole bunch of things we didn't get to. But this is normal, right? This is just part of when I'm getting comments in here that are just delightful. When you manage a site like this, it's never going to get done. Don't freak out about giant lists. Turn them into issues in GitHub. And so now we have a bunch of we had a bunch of GitHub issues that are now populated. A lot of easy ones too. So folks that are joining the Web Guild, we've got a lot of interest in the last week or so. There's a lot of really easy things that are going to be really great and good for our users if folks can pick up. So it's fine. It's fine if there are things that are left unfinished. There always will be. This site is very, very old. Um, so let's talk through the takeaways. The takeaways are, uh, I think, fairly straightforward for a redesign like this. I'm just going to dump them all on the screen and talk a little bit about them. ChiPy is not just a community of full-time developers. We are not. Jemile came into our mentorship program, and she. I don't think she calls herself a full-time Python developer, but she's an incredible designer, and she had such amazing things to offer. She really likes her community. Those are my words, not hers. She might have other things to say. But she cared enough about it and about the mentorship program that she experienced that she wanted to give back. And as a designer, she could do so much more than we ever could, trying to make that our facade or our experience for a user coming in, the UX, truly the user experience look good. She has the skills that really like are unparalleled by everybody else I've met in the area, and same with Sopan. Sopan's she's not a full time Python dev right now, but amazing dev skills and amazing focus on building this stuff. So I think it's so important for us to sort of capitalize on this. And thinking about the ChiPy as just a developers group is bad, right? We're gonna have websites that have older themes. We're gonna have sort of poor coordination. We're gonna have all these things that are missing from a holistic, good experience. We're gonna miss if we focus in too much on, well, Python is only about a certain group of people, and that is super clear. Um, the next one is that you get out what you put in. Both of the people that I worked with on this project, Sopan, who really led it. She's the one who went through the program, and so did Jemile. So both of the people who were contributed to this thing, and I'm like really again just the hype person for, went through this mentorship program and are contributing 10x, 100x what we put in back to us. So like it's investing in our community is so great. The next one is focused versus unfocused. By just deciding we were going to do it, it allowed us to get rid of all of the nuance about can we, should we, where do we, like, oh, can we, maybe let's wait a week or let's do something else. Focusing on that time lets us just move so fast. And Sopan, I think, will be the first to tell you that when we did it, as we were working together, we really were, boom, next one, boom, next one. We laid them up and we knocked them down. And we really moved fast once we knew we were going to do it. So when you're working on a project, whether it's this or anything else, say I'm going to do it or I'm not going to do it, whatever it is. Make your decision about where you're going and commit to it, because that developer time is so valuable. If you can just save it, you save yourself from wondering whether there's a better project to work on today, right? Uh, the phased agile releases decrease the complexity is all based on this idea that by integrating into master or into main, we are able to really focus our development cycle on the next project. And rather than having this long-lived feature branch that's got a bunch of commits on it, and then there's commits on master, we merge and undo, we touch so much of our code that it just was infeasible, totally infeasible to go that route. So getting stuff on a deployable main branch is so critical. Timing matters. The fact that we released this a couple weeks ago meant we have lots of lead time up ahead of our meeting. Not enough that Natasha didn't get prevented from RSVPing for the event, but we were able to fix it, right? And those early users, the ones that are going to be engaged in the community, are the ones that are going to be the triggers, rather than maybe a week ago somebody might have signed up and tried and not been able to do it. We would have had 50 people saying, "What's wrong with this site?" Not every project is Google. You don't need uptime. You don't need that like really big focus. You don't need that level of rigor on every single project that you own and manage. You should try to think and develop as if you are, like using best practices, but you shouldn't let it slow you down. And so we were able to take advantage of the fact that we were deploying. We had things in production that were still in development. And really that helped us to rip the Band-Aid off and to move to this new design rather than waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks with a feature branch saying, oh, I don't know if is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? And the last step is everyone makes mistakes. There are bugs, so many bugs that Sopan and I added in this process. Like I said, I found one today in this stuff. That's really important. I think if we were Google, you could also say, what are the things that are missing from our cycle? Sure, we could have done full beta testing or UAT in a dev environment. That would have been nice. It would be great. It might cost a lot of money for us to do that. It'd be great to be able to roll out both front ends at the same time, and it might be easier to do that if we decouple our API, the data serving elements, from the UI, the interactive elements. There are a few projects that I've been working on that make me think that that's continues to be the right way to do things. But redesigning the entire site to have a data API and a front end API, that's tougher, right? It's like we're not going to rebuild our entire API first. And then test coverage is really big here. We caught a lot of stuff in early on because of our tests that exist, but we also could have caught way more if we had better testing in our overall package. So that kind of stuff is really cool, and I think it'd be even neat to move into this browser headless full integration test where somebody is actually like a machine is clicking through and clicking on links and saying, does this page render the way I think it does? And there are trade-offs to that as well, but it would help us to get the confidence we would need to do something like CI/CD. We do CI today, but we don't do the CD piece. It'd be nice to just automate a deploy and have confidence because we know that our product is ready to go. For smaller open source projects, just like for smaller companies, that's hard. It's hard to do. But if we can invest in it, that'd be kind of cool. All right, so I'm wrapping up. I'm pretty much coming down the last bit here. This is effectively my last slide, but I do want to take a pause here for a little bit. I mentioned the folks that I worked with on this. Really shout out to Aaron, who's the head of the Web Guild, and has been doing some really great work to keep that group productive and successful and enabled this work to happen. I, like I said, will be stepping down from the board in a little bit, so I didn't even share my contact information. My hope is that you don't want to contact me, but I really encourage you to contact Sopan. It's been a singular pleasure to work with Sopan on this project. She's an extremely talented developer, and very exciting to see to work with somebody who's got that sort of passion and interest in building good UX experiences. I know for a fact that Sopan is looking for a new opportunity right now, and I'm sure she'll be embarrassed by me saying it, but I strongly encourage anybody who has a chance to be able to work with her or to hire. You'd be missing out if you didn't. It was truly a pleasure and really great work. So thank you, Sopan. I think that's all I have. So yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the time. Thanks for hearing me out talking about this project that we worked on. Hopefully you like the experience, but if you don't, let us know.
Awesome. Thanks so much to Ray and Safan and Jamile for all the hard work they've done on this new ChiPy website. So can you please give a round of applause? I'm going to get my clapping emoji while we wait for questions to come in. While we do that, I saw you deleted 25,000 lines of code. That's awesome. Like, my favorite part of coding is deleting code. The less code we have, the better it is. What was the thing that you were sort of sad to see leave?
Sad to see leave. Well, I think there was I literally can't remember the module, but we had a module that we just didn't know existed, and it's so easy on projects like this that are shared across different groups. But we had an app that we didn't know that it was there, and it was kind of wild. I guess what I wasn't sad to see go was we had vendored all of this CSS and JavaScript, and
Yeah.
that is the way that we got to 25,000. We didn't delete that much actual code, but we did get rid of a lot of old stuff. There was an old rotating thing that I don't know if it even worked on the homepage. It would be cool to get a feature like that working, but didn't manage to pull it off.
So you've had a fantastic run as a ChiPy organizer, and we're sort of sorry to see you like sort of end this run. But so what's next for you?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I'm currently the president of two boards. I'm very excited to be the president of one board, and then I think in June I'll get to step down and be the president of no boards. So I don't know. I think I'm interested in seeing where the Web Guild goes. I love mentorship. I've been mentoring different folks for the past few months. I'd love to keep doing that informally or formally somehow. Yeah, I don't know. There's lots of things that are opening up. I got some fun side projects. Like I said, about the D&D, I have a fun project that's using Fast API and Starlet to do that, exactly what I talked about, that backend API with a front end that's purely written in JavaScript.
Yeah,
And that's been kind of a fun project. So I hope to
awesome.
get more time for that stuff.
Well, and SQL Alchemy is going to be going async, so you're going to have a lot of things to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have to
Yeah,
retrofit everything.
yeah, for sure. All right, well, thanks so much, Ray, and we really appreciate all the hard work we put in, and we look forward to having you become just a regular old member of our community.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Awesome, man. I'll talk to you later.
See ya.
All right, so that was Ray Berg talking about the ChiPy website redesign. I'm just gonna give a plug for this raffle. JFrog is our proud sponsor. They're doing a raffle every single month of 2021. If you'd like to win this fantastic Adafruit Clue, it's a little micro device that has like a little mini screen. You could probably do a lot of cool things with it. Go to this URL right here, scan the QR code. You can also enter to win a chance. You can also enter to win a shirt, and there's some pretty awesome shirts. I think we just lost our second speaker's had some technical difficulties. He's in Austin right now, and they're sort of dealing with the effects of ice. So he's calling in from his. He's tethering his laptop to his phone and calling in. We sort of just lost him. So if we can take a 5-minute break, we'll be right back. All right. Yeah, that's perfect one. All right. All right, folks. Looks like I'm just gonna try to reach him via cell. So we're just gonna make this our regular 5-minute break. You know what? We just got him back. All right, so let's get him on the live stream. Get rid of all of this stuff right here. All right, welcome, Mason. How's it going?
This is an adventure of a lifetime, and I hope it never ends.
Where are you calling in from?
So my truck has Wi-Fi. Like I pay for the plan, but my phone was not having it anymore for some reason. I guess with everybody's power going out, too many people are on the network. But my truck Wi-Fi seems to be working right now.
Okay, awesome. So, Mason, can you please introduce yourself to our community?
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Mason Egger, and I'm a developer advocate at DigitalOcean. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, awesome. How did you first get into Python? Hey, Mason?
Yeah, I can hear. I can kind of hear you right now. We seem to be breaking in and out.
So you know what? Let's just get you started with your presentation because we can hear you just fine. So if you want to try to start sharing, we can just like go from there.
Okay, yeah. As long as y'all can hear me, then that's fine. Because I can. You're breaking up mostly, but this is the presentation. Can you see it?
The window is not loading yet. There we go. We got the window loaded. All right, Mason, take it away.
Okay, we're gonna get through this as best we can. If I drop out, I'm sorry. I'll promise that if it gets too bad, I'll come back and do the presentation on another time. I'm currently in Austin, Texas right now, and it looks like all of the lights around me came back on. So my house might get power again, but it's done this 3 times and I don't trust it. So we're not going back inside. We're just going to do a presentation from the dock. Hopefully it works. Yeah, my name is Developer Advocate at DigitalOcean. I'm waiting on there's my slides. You feel free to follow me on Twitter and reach out to me about this presentation there. You can always email me. But today we're going to talk about context managers. So how many people have seen something like this? And I apologize, I'm not going to be able to check the chat. So I'm just going to kind of go, and then go, yeah. This is a fairly standard piece of Python code. It's fairly typical where you want to read a file and you want to be able to, read the text from the file and then either print it or manipulate it in some way. But this with block is a little bit interesting because you could just do this, by assigning a variable like fh equals open _, reading it in fh.close. But this with context is something special in Python, and it's called a context manager. Before I knew what these were called, I lovingly called them just with blocks, and I've heard other people refer to them as the same. And essentially what they are is they're a kind of shortcut. They're kind of a built-in shortcut within Python to guarantee that a piece of code, an operation, is performed with certain setup and teardown steps. Even in the case of an exception, it will continue to run this, a return, or it will try its best to gracefully exit as best as possible. This was designed to simplify the try finally pattern. If you've ever used this before, it's a pretty common pattern. It's in Python, but it's common in other languages. I originally found it in Java. Java was my first language, so I originally used it there. It allows, the context managers allow for reusability. They result in cleaner code, and they typically are considered more Pythonic. This is kind of like I've never used them before. I use try finally blocks, and it looks fine. But Raymond Hediger gave a talk once about making code look more Pythonic and making code look a little bit cleaner, and truly utilizing the advantages of the language to your to your fullest extent. And this is where context managers kind of, in my opinion, is kind of like a little level up. It's taking your code to a slightly different level. You could totally write code without them. They're not a necessary thing, but they're really cool and they really do save you a lot of time. So tonight we're just going to talk about them. So context managers have many, many use cases. One of the most popular use cases is a spin up or tear down of resources. So things like file management, as we see with our with open block, things like socket combinations or connections, things like database connections, even gaming environments like PPB are basically, can be used with context managers. I know for a fact that PPB is basically just a very large context manager. Piper, who I believe has spoken here before, is a really good friend of mine, and we talk about it. And she kind of helped me with this talk. And and she's always like, PPB is just a context manager, and it really is. There's a lot to it, but it's at its core, there's a lot of context managers in PPB. They're really good for managing global state locking. You can use them with the threading.lock library, and use them for obtaining locks on pieces of code that you want to make sure don't execute in parallel by accident if you're doing such things. Mocking and testing, logging, and more. There's a ton of things you can use context managers for. It's really the limitation is literally your imagination with these. So there's a couple of ways of implementing context managers, and the first one we're going to talk about is the class implementation. So context managers can be implemented as a class. They are implemented using the enter and exit magic method. So if you've ever created a class and you do def dunder init, that's actually what's known as a magic method, and they're methods that are there for you to be able to do really special things in classes, and they're present in all classes. Whether you implement them or not, they're present. But by implementing them, you actually get a little bit more functionality out of the language. So a bare bones, absolute minimum context manager would be this piece of code that you see on my screen here. You would have a class. We're going to call it my context manager. We're going to do an enter method. We're going to return something because we have to return something, and we'll go over that in a second. And then you have to exit, and you have to use these parameters. But this is an absolute bare minimum context manager. So if we were just to open this context manager and print hello, like nothing would happen. Hello would come out. But as you can see, the context manager with my context manager parentheses as CM as our variable, the value here was actually stored inside of it. And that's why you have to return something, because when you return something out of the enter method, it gets stored into that variable and then persists after the fact. So for here, we just returned a string here. One of the things you could do is return like a file handle or something like that, and then people could connect with them, which is exactly what the file handle opener one does that we saw in the first slide. And yeah, you could do it like that. So context manager's enter method. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the enter method real quick. It is executed at the very beginning of the code before the with block is even entered. So before we enter inside of the code, the with kind of does the double dunder, can't say that. The dunder enter method essentially sets up all of our code. It's a magic method that takes only one argument, which is self, and it's usually used to establish a connection, modify system functions, setup, etc. If you are going to modify system functions, a very popular example that we'll get to in a second is modifying standard out to do some funny things. You want to keep an original copy of this, because if you don't, and you don't set things back the way they were, it will continue throughout the execution code. We'll see an example of that in a second. And then you must return a value that is stored in the variable as specified by the as keyword in Python. So if we remember that previous slide where we were able to store, or we stored the string here inside of the CM variable, this is required. You have to return something out of the dunder enter method. So an example of this would be, we're going to create a class called yelling text. So what this method is, any text that you print out with inside of the context manager, it is going to send it all to text.upper, or all uppercase. So what we do with that is basically set self, we import sys, and then we set self.standardout to standardout.write. We set standardout.write to our method, what we're going to call yell, and we just we call back to it using text.upper. So everything that we do is going to be printed out as an uppercase. It's going to be printed out in all caps. So if we have this set of sample code, so where we're going to basically just open up this context manager and we're going to print hello, it should come out in all uppercase. Now, if we've done this correctly, which I'll give you a hint, we haven't, the I should not be yelling should not come out as an output as all caps. It should come out in the same case that it went in. But as you can see from our text that we have here, it is not. It actually did come out as all caps, and this is because we did not set things back to the way they were. In our exit method, we didn't do anything. So this is where we're going to get into now the exit method. So the exit method is executed after the body of the with statement. It returns a Boolean flag indicating if any exception that occurred should be suppressed. So basically, this method optionally can return a Boolean. So it'll return, I think, false if you don't specify anything at all, or none. But if you return true, it will tell the interpreter that the exception was handled and that you should move on. This is actually a really cool feature that allows you, like, to say you're opening up a socket connector or something, and it times out and it raises the exception. Instead of you raising the exception up to the user for them to handle, maybe you can implement, say, a retry after 3 times, then you raise the exception. You could just stop the program and say, hey, this didn't work. Instead of, and gracefully exit, maybe there are other things that have been stood up you want to tear down, without just, throwing it into the fire and saying, nope, problem. The dunder exit method takes 3 arguments: exec type, exec val, and traceback. These arguments basically are the type of exception that was thrown, the value that was given back, and then the traceback. And it looks like I have the same bullet here, so we're not going to talk about that one. But basically, if it's true, well, I guess we'll go back to that. If the method returns true, whatever's in these variables will say, yeah, we did handle it. So the context manager's exit method example, here we have our yelling text again. So the first part, the dunder enter and the yell method, are pretty much the same exact method. So there's nothing really that changed there. But what we have done here is we have re-imported sys, and when we originally had saved the original standard out, like the standard out of the system, as self.standardout. Now in the exit method, we will set sys.standardout.write back to self.standardout. So we're putting it back together. We've changed the way sys.standardout.write works in here to uppercase everything. And now what we're going to do is we're going to put it back. So when we run basically the exact same code, we should now actually get the result that we expect. The hello will be yelling, and the I should not be yelling will be in the proper case. So I do not know if there are any questions, unfortunately. I would love to take some, but with one screen, it's kind of difficult.
No questions.
I guess I'll just go on. If you have any questions, please save them to the end, and I will try to go through them as best I can at the very end. So with the dunder exit, we talked about if we return true, it handles exceptions for us, which is actually really nice. So let's dig a little bit deeper into this bullet point that I had on the screen, which is if true is returned, the exception will be suppressed. Otherwise, the exception will continue to propagate up. So if we come into our yelling text method again, and we just say, hey, if exec type is exception, we're just going to give it the parent class exception, and we're going to say we're going to print, hey, something happened, but we're going to handle it for you, and we're going to just say return true, and basically what will happen is we run it again, but inside of our context manager, we're just going to raise exception. I didn't have a whole lot of creativity figuring out which exception to raise, so I just decided to raise the base exception. And normally, if this was not being handled in any sort of normal code that we may see, this exception would be raised, and we should not see I should not be yelling printed out because it normally would raise an exception. But because that we're handling it in the dunder exit method, we're going to go ahead and say hello, and then it's going to print there was an exception. And as you can see, the exception was not raised. We didn't get a trace back. And then the code continued as it was. So this is one of the really cool things is that you can catch and handle exceptions inside of the context manager class by using the variables that are passed in, and it's a really powerful feature. It's really awesome. I've really enjoyed learning about context managers lately, and I'm looking forward to implementing them in a lot of my things. Okay, but let's talk about something else. Let's talk about context managers that take parameters. As I said earlier, the dunder enter method doesn't take any sort of parameter. It only takes self. And if you try to pass something, it's no longer going to think it's that magic method, and the interpreter is going to scream at you. So how do we actually do this? Well, the way that we do this is actually with the constructor. So if we look at the example that we have here on the screen, like the example that that I posed to you at the beginning of this presentation, the with open file.txt are not actually it's not actually parameters to the inner method. The context manager initializes and instantiates a object when it's run. So what we do here is that whatever this function is, so open file.txtr is going to be a object instantiation, and it's going to save, well, we're just going to imagine it saves file.txt and r into variables, and then the context manager proceeds into the enter method and does all of the enter things where it actually might try to open the file for you, and then move on, and then it'll exit and close the file on its way out. So to show you an example of this, next slide, please. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and let's just re-implement this. Let's do I'm pretty sure that this is not the entire implementation. There's probably a lot of safeguards and checks, but let's go ahead and implement this ourselves. So we're going to basically call this file open, and what we're going to do is we're going to take in the name and the mode of the file that we want to open, which is basically just like the one that we have in our previous example. Inside of the dunder enter, we're going to say self.filehandle file_handle is equal to opening with the self and the mode. And then we're going to return the file handle back, because if you remember from our previous example, we use the fh variable inside of this context manager to actually read from the file. So what we're going to do is that's how we're going to know we're going to return it back up so that it can be accessed. It's going to perform its normal things, fh.read, we're going to get the text. And then at the very end, it's going to print the text. Now, the file.txt I have is actually like a whole like long file, so I wasn't able to fit it on the screen here. But I will also say that all of this code is on GitHub, so you will be able to see it and use it. Like it's going to be at the end of the thing. But all of my examples are on GitHub, so you can run them and play with them yourself. So that will actually print out, and there's actually, so now that we've talked about the way that we implement it using classes, let's talk about the way we can do it using everything else. All of the lights just went off around me. We lost power again. It's going to be a long night. Okay, sorry about that. So the context manager's function implementation, this is actually a library inside of the standard lib that we can use to implement them on top of functions. So if we want to do it inside of say we have a file that has some scripts and stuff, but we don't want to have to implement a full class for it, we don't have to. We can totally implement it using the context lib library. I'm going to assume since I haven't got any texts, I'm still going. Context managers don't have to be implemented as classes. They can be implemented as function level can be implemented at the function level using generators. We can use the context lib manager and the context lib manager.context manager decorator to specify our context managers. And then we use the yield function as you normally would with a generator. We're going to yield back the variable that would have been stored, that we would have returned and done under enter. We're going to yield that back up, and then that's going to be what the separator is between the enter and the exit, which I actually think is a very clever design, to yield at that level and then enter in, and then have that be the separator between enter and exit. It's really eloquent. I really enjoy it. So an example of this would be, say, we're going to, since we had a yelling class, let's go ahead and have a whisper class. And we're going to import the context lib, and we're going to define a function called whisper. We're going to decorate it with @contextlib.contextmanager. We're going to go ahead and import sys, and then set the original write to standard.out.write. We're going to define a whisper write. This is where it's a little bit different, because remember, instead of these being in two different methods, lights came back on, they are going to be in different, it's going to be like just all in one. So we're going to implement a function inside of a function called whisper write, where we just do original text.lower. We're going to set sys.standardout.write to whisper write, and that's basically whenever we enter in, it's going to lowercase all of our code. Then we're going to yield whisper. Whisper is what's going to be stored inside of our variable. So the as, fh, as, myvar, it's going to be stored in there. And if we print it out, we would get it. And then once the context manager exits, it will perform the sys.standardout.write to the original write and move forward. So an example of this would be, this should be whispered, and then this should not be whispered. And our code will come out looking thusly, is that this should be whispered, this is not whispered. And yeah. So one of the last things we're going to talk about is we can also implement this using a try finally if we wanted to. So the way that we would handle exceptions in this, or one of the ways that we can handle exceptions in this, is to use the try except finally method, which is what the context manager was originally trying to help with. But it still does kind of help to use it in here. So it's the same code. We'll whisper write all that, but instead we're going to try yielding whisper. There's nothing that's going to actually happen in that yield, but anything that happens inside of the context manager block will be raised inside of that try. So while we're in that try, like any exception that's raised in the context manager block will be caught, will at least be attempted to be caught. So except exception. I do think that'll catch almost everything. And then we'll say exception happened and finally set it to sys.standardout.write. So from this example, we're going to import whisper. Again, we're going to say this should be whispered. We're going to try to raise an exception to test this, and then we're going to print this is not whispered. And the exception did happen. It was printed and it says it, and then this is not whispered. But I would draw your attention to this. The exception happened was also whispered. Just by this implementation, we had not yet set sys.standardout.write back to the original version. So you do need to take that in mind, is that when an exception is caught and when you're dealing with it, almost kind of unlike the other one, where if we go back, let's go, if I can go back all the way, it's a ways, but if we talk about this one, we were able to set the sys.standardout.write to the original one and then handle the exception. Whereas with the way that this one has just happened to be laid out, we did not. Now maybe there is a way to do it. I will admit I don't know. I didn't really actually play around with this much. I thought it was just kind of interesting, so I wanted to show it to you. But based on my understanding of a try except finally, I don't really think you have the option of setting it back to normal. Unless you did it back to normal. Maybe we could put this sys.standardout.write underneath the yield, but then if the exception happened, it would probably not get there. So it's an interesting one. It's definitely worth thinking about. But yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and ask if there's any questions. And if I'm lucky, I'm still here and people can hear me and I didn't just talk to myself for the latter part of 20 minutes.
No, dude, you're still here. Thanks so much, Mason. Can we please give Mason a round of applause in the chat? That was awesome. This was like the most Texas talk ever. Like, you're giving it from your pickup truck. Like, how more Texas can you get?
Was not planned, and as I'm sitting here, I'm watching the power go on and off, and I'm just like, I've got a server in my house, and I'm too lazy and cheap to buy a UPS, so I'm like, I should probably just go unplug it because it's probably crying and screaming at me right now.
Yeah, I know. I think it's awesome. Well, yeah, can we please give Mason a round of applause? Like, this is powering through a talk. This is fantastic. This is what we're here for. Thanks so much, Mason. Just to get you started with some questions. What's your favorite example of seeing like a context manager in the wild?
I have to say, I've got two answers to this. One, I'm a DevOps. I was originally a DevOps person and a site reliability engineer before I was a dev advocate. So, and I love networking. Like I am fascinated by how we send beeps and boops across the world and we can talk to each other. So using the context manager to manage a socket connection is honestly, in my mind, is it's so pure, it's so beautiful. I really like it. The one that surprises me the most is honestly PPB. The more I dig into PPB and I realize that it's just a giant context manager, it's so cool. And like, I really do think that like the maintainers of that project have kind of pushed context managers and sometimes the Python language to its breaking points at times. I'm going to write a blog post about an issue that I faced ready this talk because if you do any sort of weird printing inside of a context manager, like say like my yelling example, if you try to prepend a string to that, like say I : and then yelling text, it will print it twice. And it took Piper and I an hour and a half to figure it out because sys.standout is called twice when print is called. When it does the new line character, it calls it. You overwrote sys.standardout.write in the context manager, so I was getting a lot of I was like, where is this text coming from? And it's such a cool thing. I'm going to totally do a blog post about it because like I've never broke Python that much, and it took us both a while to figure out what was going on.
So just a shout out to that project. It's PPB.
PPB, Pursued Pie Bear. It's an educational game engine written by a really close friend of mine. And I think she's given talks before. It's an amazing, gaming library. Definitely give it a try out. I know they're pushing to get to a 1.0 release. So if anyone has any spare cycles and they want to work on gaming in Python, I know they're looking for more contributors.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, it's Pursued Pie Bear. Check it out. I've made a really simple game using like the tutorial. It was a lot easier to get started in there than it was with Pygame. So if you're interested, please do check it out. We actually had some questions about your code. Like when you were, you know what, this is going to get too much into the weeds with what we're doing, so let's not do that one. But yeah, if you do check the chat later on, Joe had a question about like why you're importing inside of a dunder method, but we can talk about that offline. Ray had a question.
I'm happy, but
what's up? Do you want to bring up?
I'm happy to answer the question.
Yeah, we can bring up your screen. It's just like it's a little hard with
Well, it's a good question. I mean, just imagine a dunder init method with import sys inside of it. That way, it only get I could be 100% wrong. and if I am, please tell me. I think at that point it would only get imported at the time the context manager would be called, so it would save you cycles in the beginning. But I haven't tested that. I could be wrong. I do know that we imported it in both dunder enter and dunder exit. And you may be like, well, why are you importing it twice? Python modules are cached, so importing it after you've imported it, and like it doesn't have any performance hit whatsoever. Yeah. Also, I will say that was the example that was in Fluent Python when I was learning context managers, and I kind of went with it. So it's kind of cool.
No, I think it's because like if you're like importing in a module scope and you're rewriting it, like it's not going to do things the way you expect it to. Well, okay. Anyways, but let's talk a little bit about Python community. Like you're living in Austin. What's the community like down there?
Oh, I love the community here. Okay, I just saw. Okay, this is getting more Texas. A raccoon just ran down the street. I'm not kidding. Man, I wish I had a camera there. But I love the Python community in Austin. I used to try to go and do Python meetups. That's usually held at Capital Factory downtown. But I don't like going downtown in Austin, to be honest. But Anaconda is in Austin, like their headquarters. Peter Wang and like all the Conda and data science people are here. And Peter Wang was the leader of the Austin Python user group for a very long time. I think his name is still on it. I don't know how much he has to do with it on the day-to-day, because, as CTO of one of the largest data science tools in existence, you don't really have a lot of time for user group meetups. Yeah. But I used to still see him quite often. So the Python community in Austin is vibrant. There's the Austin Python user group meeting, there's the Austin Web Python user group meeting, and then there's the Evening of Code, where Jacob Barhart brings in a whole bunch of people, and just like someone gives a demo, and it's a workshop. It's a monthly workshop. There's a monthly meetup. There's a monthly web meetup. There's lots of Python jobs in Austin. There's lots of Python startups in Austin. It's a great place for Python.
Awesome. Yeah, I went down to Austin for Pi Texas like 2 years ago. Fantastic Python community down there. That's actually where I met Mason. I had a guy offer me jerky that he like made himself, and like he like took out a knife, started cutting it. I thought that was like very Texas. So it's a fantastic place to be. When conferences are in person again, really recommend y'all go. Mason, this was great having you. I really appreciate you. We really appreciate you powering through some of the difficulties you've had with the power situation. Before we let you go, do you have any words of wisdom or any shout outs you'd like to make to our community?
Okay, so you've been breaking up most of the time there, but I think I got it in like words of wisdom for people in the community, and I think I got that much. So I'll answer that question. Yeah, just build stuff, practice. The only way to get better at anything that I have found in life is by practicing and practicing. Like just write code, like do leak code problems if that's your thing. Anything that gets you thinking about a problem and solving it in Python is going to make you better in the long run. I actually schedule 30 minutes of deliberate practice every single day where I either pull up a leak code question because I want to do it quickly. Like I'm not the biggest fan of that kind of coding, but it does get your brain solving problems, and you sometimes go and reach for new things and you learn about new things in the language when you do it. Or I work on an open source, but every day on my work calendar, I schedule 30 minutes of deliberate practice to make sure that I am coding. Now, as a developer advocate, I don't always get the option of coding every day. Some of y'all do work as engineers, and you're getting the deliberate practice. By working as actual engineers and writing code, you get that. If you're like me and you work in a tech adjacent field, like I do code on occasion, but honestly, I've been spending a lot of time in marketing meetings lately. I have to deliberately add practice to that. And it's the same thing for if you want to learn anything new. Maybe you're at work working in Django and that's all you're ever going to work in, but maybe you want to learn Flask or Fast API. You're never going to really absorb that knowledge by like osmosis. You're going to have to set aside some deliberate time to practice it. So practice. It works. Like I do it, and I think it's really helpful. And just, there's a lot in the community. Community is really awesome. And I'm glad that you're all here, and the lights just came back on for the 5th time since I started this presentation.
Okay, awesome. Well,
they'll be back off again in 5 minutes.
Well, I think that's a really good place to leave it. Can we please give Mason another round of applause in the chat? Thanks so much, Mason, for joining us. and we'll see you next time. And I wish you all the best with your power situation. Text me, let me know what's going on.
Oh my goodness. Texans don't understand ice, and neither does our infrastructure. But yes, thank you very much. It was great seeing all of y'all. I look forward to hopefully coming back again in the future.
Awesome. So that was Mason Egger with no power calling from his truck, talking about the enters and the exits of context managers. I'm going to bring on Ray Berg just to make some announcements about our upcoming elections. Before I do that, I just want to give one last shout out to our fantastic sponsor, JFrog. A lot of the stuff we're doing online is made possible because of the support of JFrog. They're going to be sponsoring us for 2021, and every single month of this year during the ChiPy main meeting, they're going to be doing a giveaway for an Adafruit clue. Go to this URL, which is bit.ly/ChiPy clue feb. Enter in for a chance to win a clue along with a JFrog t-shirt. Awesome. And one last thing, we do have an after party in our chippy.town gather.town space. So if you go to the website chippy.town, it'll take you to that space. You can sort of see like me right over there in this space with my little sprite. So we're gonna be hanging out there. Please join us. But before we do that, we have a couple of closing announcements. Ray, welcome back.
Hey, glad to be back.
I heard some sort of elections are going on.
Yeah, it's our second elections in our new governance model. So last year we did our first batch, and we appointed our current board, and this year we're doing our second set. Very exciting.
Awesome. So what does this mean for Chicago Python?
Well, basically, what we've structured around is that our board, which is the list that you shared earlier today, that board rotates off in halves, as we do 2-year terms. And so this year it'll be half of the board. It's actually 4 of 7. So it's a pretty big change. But we're going to do 4 of 7 are going to be rolling off. You and I are both in that list. We're going to both be rolling off. And we're going to take a bunch of new folks in. So we actually have done the nomination process. We have 5 nominees for the 4 slots, which is really cool. And the elections are going to take place starting on Sunday by the organizers.
Awesome. And so as a board member, like what kinds of things do people do just so other folks in our community have context?
Yeah, that's a great question. We really have like 2 structures. We used to have this general term called organizer, which was just kind of all encompassing everybody who did something. But we realized that like organizer really means everybody who's helping. And so there's about 30 organizers. And then the board is responsible for making sure that we have money set aside and we are working with sponsors and we're directing all the activities that have in the group. The board just meets a couple times a month and they try to set the direction for the organization, and they are responsible for making sure that it's going to be successful into the years ahead. So it's a cool role. It doesn't require all that much work, but the folks who are volunteering are really I appreciate them volunteering to help make ChiPy run. As we pointed out, ChiPy's been around since 2003, and it'd be nice if it survived for another 2 decades, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like we have a lot of excited members, a lot of new blood, and it's fantastic to see. I did have a few folks ask me how they can get involved. So just like if you were new to a community and you're looking to give back or just like looking to get more involved, what would be the first thing that you would do?
Oh yeah. So now on the new webpage on the very bottom, there's a little page called Organizers, and on that page is every organizer that's involved in our community today. I think with only a few exceptions. Some people don't want to be listed for whatever reason, which is just fine. But you can reach out to any of those people. You can join Slack. You can get involved with the Web Guild. You can just attend meetings and say, hey, I love this. How do I help make sure that this keeps happening? The way that organizers are appointed is the board just says, oh, this person's been helping us. They're an organizer. All the organizers then get to vote on who makes up the board. You can just start as simple as helping do pull requests or helping do like plan things, get an algorithm for the algorithm SIG, or give a talk or help MC the web dev SIG, right? You could do a lot of things. There's anything you can put your mind to.
And I think the best way to get involved is, as Ray said, just like start reaching out to people. And I think Slack is the best place to start join the Slack. I'm gonna have a link. I'm gonna share my screen right now so we can just have that up while we talk about it. So if you go to this link, send yourself an invite. You can join this community, and there's a lot of conversations, a lot of opportunity for people to get involved. So I think Slack's the best place to start. It is sort of a hard question. It's like, what do you need help with? And it's like, we need help with everything. It's like, what do you want to do? But if you just start joining conversations, we'll start reaching out, and please reach out to us with things that you're interested in doing, and we'll figure out where there's a fit.
100%. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome. Is there anything else before we sort of close out for the night?
I just want to say that the new board will take on about midway through March, and they'll serve for 2 years. So I'm super excited. This is a really exciting time to be a part of ChiPy, and it's an exciting time to get forward. The work that you've done making these live streams happen, the work that Joe has done, and others on the board, really, it's like we're set up to have one of the most interesting periods in our history, and Python is only growing and getting better, as proven by the matching.
Yeah, with pattern matching, first it's pattern matching, then it's the world. I
Then
mean,
it's the world.
it's already the world. Like data science is the world. All right, man. This has been fun. Are you going to the after party?
Absolutely, I'll be there.
All right, cool. We'll see you there. Well, thanks so much, Ray. All right, so that's it for us for tonight. I'm just going to share my link again so you know where to go for the after party. We're going to be hanging out in our Gather.town space. Hope to see you all there. Thanks to all the speakers for this fantastic event. Really, like a shout out to Mason. Like the guy, like toughed it out in his truck. Like I cannot believe it. Like that's fantastic. All right, well, I'll see you all later. Have a good night. Mm-hmm.